Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice podcast. The Heart of Hospice podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
This episode is sponsored by Hospice Navigation Services. When you need information about hospice, Hospice Navigation Services can help. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. You can book a complimentary 30-minute session when you need general information, or book a 60-minute session when you have in-depth questions or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
Hospice nurse Beth Cavenaugh is my guest today to kick off our Back to Hospice Basics episodes. My co-host today, not my guest, but my co-host, is Beth Cavenaugh. She's a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with a rich experience in caring for patients at the end of life. Beth works to demystify death and dying so that more people will walk towards this powerful life event rather than running away from it. She's also the author of Some Light at the End and The Power and Pain of Nursing, Self-Care Practices to Protect and Replenish Compassion. Beth is on a mission to help everyone exit this world knowing their wishes will be respected, they'll be taken care of, and they'll be comfortable in the final stage of their lives. Today's episode is the first one in our Back to Hospice Basics series. We're going to be getting back to the heart of hospice, as it were, and Beth Cavenaugh is going to be helping me in these discussions where we're going to be tackling some of the basic tenets and practices inside hospice care. So today's episode, we figured we'd start at the beginning. We're talking about hospice admission, how things get started, what to expect, why we do some of the things we do, and what good care is supposed to look like at the very start of a hospice admission. So, new format, new friend, and here's my conversation with Beth Cavenaugh. Beth Cavenaugh, I'm so glad to have you back on the show. Welcome to the Heart of Hospice podcast.
Thanks, Helen. It's so fun to be back here with you.
I know it's been a really long time since we connected, but you and I are getting ready to get back to the basics of hospice care, where we're bringing back to the future, the old stuff, the classic hospice information that the Heart of Hospice is known for. And today, you are basically my co-host, which is awesome. But I am going to start out with an icebreaker question from the End of Life deck.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I love that.
Okay, so I picked one just at random. And here's your question. It's called Message from Beyond. I kind of like that. Sounds a little creepy. If you could send one post-death message from beyond, what would you tell your family?
After I've died, what would I tell my family? I would tell my family to try new things, listen to your gut, and even though it seems crazy, just do it.
I like that. Live fully. Live fully, right?
Please, please. We only have one chance in this sweet little world. So what's your answer to that question?
I think it would depend on who the message was to. So if it was my brother, I would tell him that dad joke that you just told was not funny. That was not a funny joke. If it was my daughters, I would say something like, stand up straight, brush your hair. And that way they would know exactly who it came from. They would know it was me.
Like your little code words for yes, it is Helen.
Yes. Stand up straight. Oh, Mom, stop. But yeah, I think I would customize it.
I like that.
I know.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't have anything meaningful or, sentimental to say. It would be all about torturing them just a little bit.
Haunting them. Yeah. You're just going to haunt them.
Exactly. I mean, what's the point if you can't have a little fun with some post-death messages? All right. Well, so we are jumping into hospice basics today, which is at the heart of what you and I both do as hospice nurses. And so for this first one, we decided we would talk about hospice admissions, how things get started when a person is admitted to hospice. For my listeners, we're going to try to include some information for you to have that you would be able to use if you're a hospice provider. So you're going to get some benefit there. And if you're a hospice consumer, so if you're a patient or a family caregiver, we're hoping to have some information for you as well. So a little perspective from both sides, and maybe talk a little bit about the method behind the madness, because there are reasons for some of the crazy stuff we do in hospice care.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about admissions that I've done, should I just launch in?
Yeah.
When I think about, I used to work in the hospital and help people have, smooth transitions from the hospital to home with hospice. And there's a lot of paperwork and I guess red tape maybe that needs to happen for somebody to actually sign on to hospice.
Yes.
And the actual hospice admission for the consumers, people who are actually signing on to hospice or the families who are taking care of them, I think it's really important to set aside a large chunk of time. Hospice admissions usually take a ridiculous amount of time with a little bit of paperwork. Nowadays, it's probably less just because digitally, I know more people can do the digital paperwork, but it does. I noticed families' eyes gloss over a lot during a hospice admission because the nurse comes in. Hopefully, they've already had a pre-admission appointment where the hospice nurse can tell them what hospice actually is, but sometimes that is a big part of the admission, is reminding them what hospice is, what it isn't, what your rights are as a hospice patient. It also involves looking around the house to find all the medications that this patient is on. And so having the medications ready and there, which includes medications that are over the counter, like Tylenol or Senecot or Miralax, and any other medications they may be on. And it's just a lot of information. So maybe have a couple people there with the patient so people can kind of tag team in and out during the admission, because it does take a long time and a lot of it's kind of boring information and people just get really tired. The hospice patient may be exhausted because they may have just come out of the hospital and they are not up for the task of actually, participating in fully with this hospice admission. So just set aside a large chunk of time and maybe ideally have two other people outside of the hospice patient who can actually be part of it.
Yeah, that is great advice. So for those of our listeners who are end-of-life workers, I think it's important to remind them and for us to remember as end-of-life workers that for every paper that's signed, there's a major decision going on and there's anticipatory grief and emotion that goes into that. So if you are someone who's signing a hospice election form, which means choosing hospice for someone, that's a big thing. It says, I'm acknowledging that there is a serious illness that's going to result in my loss of my person, and that we are forgoing treatment. So in a way, there's a sense of hope that's being lost. And then when you sign forms, maybe you're signing a do not resuscitate form. That is monumental and very intense for people. So for the provider that's having the paper signed, it's 5 minutes worth of explanation, maybe 10, and a signature down at the bottom and a witness. But I have actually signed a DNR for someone else who was, I was electing hospice for this person. And it was the last form I signed, and it was the only one that brought tears for me. Because it's a very monumental decision. It can be changed. You can change your mind. You can reverse that decision. But I think it's important for hospice workers to remember that paperwork has more meaning than just rules and regulation and policy.
No, I'm so glad. I think you should start these discussions, Helen, because you have a much better perspective, because I'm appreciating your perspective. And as somebody who's done it probably too many times, I think sometimes we do, as hospice providers, it becomes kind of rote and we forget.
Yeah.
And I feel like I just forgot, how big these decisions are and how heart-wrenching it is also. I know that signing on for hospice is heart-wrenching in general for both the hospice patient and the family, but the actual forms are just really powerful, tangible pieces of paper that say, yeah, I'm okay with not being resuscitated if there is a cardiac event or a pulmonary embolus that happens or something happens while I'm on hospice. And I'm okay with not going back to the hospital if something, I'll call my hospice team if I feel really short of breath or in pain. They are all really enormous decisions for somebody. And I think that you brought up a good point. You can change your mind at any time.
Sure.
This process. If somebody, I've had many patients who, when they have, maybe they're in a pain crisis and they decide to call 911 and go to the hospital. That happens all the time. And it's great if they can also call their hospice provider so we can kind of coordinate and come visit you at the hospital and really talk about goals of care. Right.
But those decisions that are made when someone is panicked or in pain, shortness of breath is another one.
Yes.
When people are panicked and the hospice nurse can't get there for 30 minutes, well, I can call 911 and have somebody here in 5. I understand where people are coming from with that. So the time issue that you bring up, I think, is really important because it may take a couple of hours or more to do an initial nursing visit. But the nursing visit isn't the only one that happens, right? We also had the initial visit for the social worker and the initial visit for the chaplain. A lot of times you may get that first visit from the aide that gets started, and that's all going to happen within the first 5 days of a person being put onto hospice care or choosing to be put on hospice care. And it seems like this huge flood of people this is an invasion of these people coming into your homes. So the method behind the madness is that's required by regulation.
By Medicare, right.
Yes. They don't want us putting those off. mainly because our patients change so quickly, and most of them, a great number of them, die within a very short time period of being admitted into hospice.
Yeah, I think I heard that 17 days was the average length of stay in hospice. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about 2 weeks.
Right. It's short. I
Yeah.
mean, it's short for a lot of people. Some people are on for months, years, but for some, for many, for most, it's very short.
Yeah. I want to say about half of our patients are like that. So we have limited time to come in, support our families, and get things rolling. And until we do those initial assessments, find out what you need, what you want, what you don't want, we can't really help create a plan of care, which is the goal of getting all these initial visits made. We're going to break for just a minute. This isn't the end of the episode. There's more to come, so stay connected.
When you need information about hospice for yourself or someone you care about, Hospice Navigation Services can help you navigate hospice care for the best end-of-life experience possible. If you're walking this journey and need the help of an experienced guide, Hospice Navigation Services is here for you. We understand the importance of having a guide who can provide personalized, unbiased support. Our team of experienced hospice navigators is here to offer one-on-one consulting sessions by phone or video. Whether you need information about how to start hospice services or guidance for your current services, we're here to listen and provide compassionate support every step of the way. You can book a 30-minute free navigation session with an experienced hospice navigator when you need general information to start your hospice experience. Book a 60-minute hospice navigation session when you have in-depth questions about hospice or need to troubleshoot your current hospice care. You deserve compassionate support and guidance for your end-of-life care. It's your journey. Hospice Navigation Services can be your guide. Visit theheartofhospice.com to schedule your hospice navigation session today.
So let's talk a little bit about these core members, the folks that are going to be the primary team that are coming out to make the visits. We've got the nurse. We sort of know what the nursing role is, right? This is somebody who is going to help with symptom management, deal with any pain or symptom issues that your person might have. They're going to be making sure the home is safe, no sign of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, help manage medications. What other role of the nurse can you think of?
I mean, usually we come in and we'll do some kind of physical assessment right away, and, listen to heart, lungs, maybe blood pressure if that's needed, and, just make sure that medications are understood and that your caregiver understands the medications that can be given, on a regular basis, but also as needed for pain and or symptom management.
Right. A lot of education. And that's in addition to the paperwork that starts that first visit. So that's why that initial nursing visit is so long.
Right.
So the social worker will also make an initial visit. What kind of things can we expect the social worker to be looking at and talking about?
Like you said, I mean, to make sure that they're in a safe environment where they can get good care from their primary caregiver if they have one, or how they're doing independently if they are managing their own care, and also just to be another voice and another set of eyes and ears in terms of the patient's emotional capacity, how they're doing emotionally, how their relationships are doing. I think they can go deeper. They definitely can go deeper into more of a counseling role if that's needed. And they also provide a large amount of resources that's available in the community or through hospice if they need maybe meals scheduled to be delivered. Yeah, that's what I can think of right now. What do you have for the social worker?
I think about safety as far as environmental safety for sure, but also safety in terms of Is the caregiving system going to be adequate? Is the patient neglected? Is there any sign of abuse? That's always something that our social workers are assessing for as they go. And one of their big roles is to be supporting the caregiver. How's the caregiver doing? Caregiver burnout, caregiver collapse. Are they trying to do it on their own? Because let's face it, 55 million unpaid caregivers in the United States. The ones who are dealing with people with serious illness are oftentimes older and not in the best of health themselves.
Right. I mean, you think about an 80-year-old with cancer. I mean, generally they have a partner who's in the same age bracket and they have their own set of health issues to deal with. I mean, I remember going into a patient's house and the husband had just walked up from the basement because he was doing laundry. And he was just so short of breath. He took 15 minutes to recover once he got up the stairs. And this is the caregiver,
my gosh.
And the wife is lying in bed. She's unable to help. And she has urine-soaked sheets. And, it can be really messy. And it's a huge amount of physical labor for the caregiver oftentimes. So yes, the social worker is also evaluating how the caregiver is doing. Thank God, right?
Absolutely. They're advocates for patients, but they're also advocates for the caregivers. They offer the respite care. Most of the time, respite care as a topic is brought up by the social worker based on the level of burnout they're seeing, what they're hearing from the caregiver.
Right.
So that's a very special thing that they're able to offer.
Yeah, I love respite care. I think it's really, really important help for the caregivers to have a 5-day break. So yes, I'm a big fan of that.
I think that's huge. We're going to do an episode just on respite care because I think that's worth talking about. I think a lot of caregivers are afraid of it for a lot of different reasons, but we'll take a deep dive into that in the future. I like that topic. So let's talk about the chaplains, the soul jockeys, the most misunderstood people on the hospice team. What do those guys even do? Nobody seems to know.
Oh God. I mean, I feel like the chaplains are, definitely an underutilized resource but they're an integral part to the dying process and to the patient's dying process and to supporting the family emotionally and spiritually. When Cicely Saunders founded Hospice, she wanted it to be interdisciplinary chaplain for the spiritual needs of the dying patient, to have those be met by a chaplain. And the chaplains are, non-denominational, so they come often rooted in their own faith tradition, but they're non-denominational in terms of the support that they can provide to the patient and the family. And I also view them as significant counselors. They really, I mean, when I can't do or nor have the time to sit with a patient and really dive into how they're feeling about the dying process, I call on the chaplain. And that is what they're there for, is to sit at the bedside with the patient and the family and talk to them about the dying process and help them kind of process, the biggest step they'll ever take in their life, their death.
Yeah, chaplains are the listeners of the group. And because they are interfaith providers, I think it's important, I guess, to sum it up in a nutshell, you don't have to be religious for the chaplain to have a role in your care. Right. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with religion. It doesn't have to.
Right.
So regardless of what cultural background or faith background or religious background, or if you have no faith belief system, being an agnostic or a humanist, the chaplain can still be a great part of your care team.
I think a really important part of your care team. And I think that, people often decline the chaplain because they have an idea in their head that there's kind of a religious bent to it. But
right.
My biggest urge is to meet with the chaplain as soon as you can. And you can make the decision after that if you felt like it was a good connection or not. But I think you will be amazed at what they can provide for you at the bedside and the support for your family.
I agree. So that brings us to the next part that I wanted to discuss, refusing visits.
Mhm.
Because we're talking about the core team, right? We've got the nurse, the social worker, and the chaplain. There are a lot of other different disciplines that might be involved. They're just not considered core team members. The aide is one of them, a certified nursing aide. We've got volunteers. We might have different therapy modalities, pet therapy, massage therapy, aromatherapy that could be part of the care team. But what are the patients or the caregiver's rights when it comes to refusing visits? Let's talk about that some.
My understanding is that they have to have at least one nursing visit within a 2-week period. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's the minimum. I mean, they can have that, and as long as they meet that criteria, then they can still be part of hospice. But, oftentimes, I mean, in my opinion, I think more visits is usually better, just more eyes and ears. Hospice people change quickly a lot of times, and to have somebody checking in on them, whether it be the chaplain, the social worker, the nurse, or the aide, I think can be really helpful for the patient, definitely, and for the family, just because we know what dying looks like. We know what shortness of breath looks like. We've been down this road many times before, and so maybe for a caregiver that doesn't notice that their wife is actually having a hard time of breathing when she's in the shower, the CNA can see that, call up the nurse and say, hey, she's having more shortness of breath this week with the shower. So, and then the nurse can intervene and say, come out, teach them about, some medications that we can use for helping somebody to breathe.
I think the CNA, first of all, is that boots on the ground, first source of information. They have the most intimate relationship with the patient. I think they hear things and see things and are told things, witness things that the other disciplines don't necessarily see, mainly because aide visits are usually more frequent.
Right.
Whereas a chaplain or a social worker might not see a patient, but maybe once or twice a month, but that aide may be in there 3 or 4 or 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another one. I mean, I urge as soon as possible to have the CNA, the certified nursing aide, come out, visit. Even if you feel like you don't need help with a shower yet, which a lot of patients say, I don't need help with any of that. They can come, they can actually do light housework for a little bit, maybe help with some laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also about establishing rapport and trust. And so that by the time the patient actually needs help with a shower or maybe a bed bath, they will feel more just trusting of this being. And I mean, CNAs are magic, honestly, like hands down. I mean, they really do bring a lot of love to the program. And so I'm big fans of the CNA. And you're right, Helen. I mean, it is a very intimate journey, with the CNA, because they are doing the physical care that's needed while they're there. So
yeah, a lot of times that aide is the first witness, the first one to notice a change in condition, and also to notice caregiver burnout.
Right, right.
Yeah,
right.
signs that the caregiver is having trouble managing stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we never want to discount those aide visits. They're super important. Well, I think we've gotten off to a good start, both about hospice admissions and to our Back to the Basics episodes. So thank you, Beth. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Helen. It was great visiting with you.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes, and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.